Are you preparing for a certification exam but don't know where to start? Are you feeling overwhelmed by the number of topics you have to learn? Well, in this episode, I'm going to share how to build a study plan that'll get you prepared for your certification. So if you're interested, keep listening.
Do you want a career in cybersecurity? Are you unsure how to start? Curious what it means to be a cybersecurity professional? This is the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast with Dr. Jeff Colburn. He's a 30-year industry professional and the founder of Team Caveo, a company that specializes in helping people launch cyber careers. Join us on this podcast as we explore what it means to be a cybersecurity professional and how to get started. Welcome to the show.
Are you curious if a cyber career is right for you? Do you want to get into cyber and don't know where to start? Are you working in IT and looking to grow? Well, schedule a one-on-one cyber career coaching session with me to discuss where you are currently and how you can best move forward. Go to coaching.cyberjobhacks.com or click the link in the show notes to schedule your session today. Welcome, everyone, to the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Colburn. Well, last week we talked about how to prepare for a certification exam. I mentioned, everything you need to know is in that exam blueprint, and also how those verbs that they use in the blueprint, how they give us a good indication of the level of the things you have to know. Right. So if you missed that podcast, I suggest you go back because it's really valuable and it's going to help you with this episode as well. However, as we, going forward, even with the exam blueprint, tells us what we need to know. There's still a lot of information that you have to cover, right? There's a lot of information you need to know, right? So how do we cover all these topics, right? You're approaching this, you have this exam blueprint, it has like all these different sections and all these topics in these sections. There's a lot of information and it can be overwhelming. And a lot of times we don't know where to begin our study. So in this episode, we're going to start talking about developing a solid study plan. And I'm not just talking about, well, I'm going to study this or I'm going to study that. No, this has to be an actual plan. You're going to put it down. You're going to be very specific, right? It's going to highlight what you're going to study, the resources you're going to use, and the amount of time that you're going to devote to each topic, right? It's going to give you a lot of structure, and it's going to help you from feeling overwhelmed, right? So that's what I wanted to walk you through in this episode is kind of like, how do we build out this study plan? And, the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to build it in a spreadsheet, right? Because this is a living document. It's going to be changing. You're going to be updating it. You're going to want to move things around. You're going to have things in columns. So either you use Microsoft Excel or, Google Sheets. It doesn't matter. Either one works as long as there's a spreadsheet in it. And it's going to allow you to kind of organize that study plan. So, for example, what I like to do when I start building my study plan is I start off with the exam blueprint topics, right? So I'm going to put those in the very left column in my spreadsheet. And, so I'll have those, listed out, one after another. I'll probably have them broken down by the sections, like the exam blueprint will have sections. I'll actually have those section headers, and then I'll have the topics. And I'll even put the weight that, the exam blueprint say, hey, this section's 25%. That's going to be on my spreadsheet. All right. But the things you're going to find as you're building out this spreadsheet and you're listening the exam topics is that some of these exam topics are very broad or they might seem vague, right? So there's, a lot to cover. So like, one exam I'm taking, it says, I need to know, the different types of control data and management planes. Well, there's a lot there, right? So just putting that down is not enough, right? So I'm going to have to put subtopics, right? So these are things I'm creating beyond the exam blueprint, right? They're definitely going to be covered in the exam, but just in the actual blueprint, they didn't break it down to the specific, in this instance, control plane, data plane, management plane. So I have to take that effort and break that out so I know what to study, right? And that's kind of what you're going to want to do is like you look at exam topic. So you know what? There's a lot to that. I need to fill this out, right? So you need to add subtopics. And you may not know all the subtopics until you start studying. Like you start studying that topic and like, oh wow, there's a lot to it, more to this. So that's what I mean that this is a living document, right? You're going to keep updating as you discover, as you go through your study, and you see things that you need to know more about, right? Because like some of these topics might be the first time you've seen it, so you don't really know all that's involved in that topic. So as you start studying it and you realize, wow, I need to know this, this, and this under that topic, then you add it to the spreadsheet. So as you continue to study, or if you go back to that topic, that these are some areas that you need to cover. Right. The other thing you want to do is you want to include the weight for that topic, right? So like I said, if one section is like worth 30% of the exam, well, then that's where you're going to want to spend a lot more time. That's where you're going to really want to know that material. So you kind of want to make that stand out in your study plan. So I use color codes, right? I'll color code topics because I know these are like critical things that for the exam, right? I'm probably going to see more questions on this than on something that only has like a 10% weight. So that's what I do. I just say, hey, and it's easy. So now when I look at my spreadsheet, I see what jumps out. It's like, so usually if something's green, I know that's a heavier weighted topic, and I know I need to spend more time studying that. So once you have your topics and your subtopics in the spreadsheet, now you got to figure out what the resources you're going to use to study those topics, right? You have to know these topics, but you don't want to be jumping around trying to find a resource each time you come to a new topic, right? You want to plan this out. So you should already identify your resources in the very beginning, because, as exam date approaches, you don't want to be looking for resources. So you should, like, as you're building out the study plan, you should already be figuring out what resources you're going to use. And like, so resources could be anything from books, could be training videos, YouTube videos, just anything that helps you to learn this topic to the level that you need to know it. So for me, I usually have multiple resources for topics. So I might have a book, I might have a training video. A lot of times when I do Cisco certification exams, they have Cisco Live presentations that are available free online. I'll use those, right? And just next to each topic, right? Next to that topic column, I'll have a resource column, and I'll put my resources. The name of the book and the chapter of that book, right? Because you don't need to read an entire book, right? The idea is just to pull out the information you need. So, if you can identify the book and the chapter, and it may not even be that entire chapter, right? It just could be a section in that chapter. But for me, all I need to do is I'll put the book and chapter, and then once I get to the chapter, I know what specifically I need to pull from that chapter. And then the same was like training videos, right? A lot of time training videos are bundled into a certain certification. Well, I might be using videos from a different certification, but it's covering the topic I need to know. So like I'll just put down what training video I need to watch. Or like I said, if I'm using a Cisco Live presentation, I'll put down the name or the number, the letters and the number for that Cisco Live presentation, right? So I already know my resources in advance. So when I'm studying, I don't have to stop studying to find a new resource, right? And then you have other training videos that might be available. Like I said, YouTube videos. Like I've seen YouTube videos basically walk you through how to configure certain things. So if you have a configuration requirement on your exam and you need a walkthrough, then you can watch this YouTube video and this person will take you step by step on how to configure it, right? So it's probably a great start. So speaking of, configuration tasks or topics, right? Labs, right? You're going to want to lab things. So if you have, like, say you're taking a vendor specific examination, certification exam, and it has has exam topics, says configure a certain technology. You don't want the exam to be the first time you configure this technology. So you're going to want to lab that technology, right? And there's different ways to lab, technologies up, online resources. There's resources you can set up at home, and that's going to be a different podcast episode. We're going to talk about how to build labs at home, or how to have labs that are available to you. That'll be a future episode. But just as you're building out the study plan and you have a configuration task, then hey, I need to lab this. The exam can't be the first time that I lab this technology. And then another resource is online documentation, right? A lot of times technologies are documented by certain organization, vendors, especially vendor specific certifications. Their online documentations are a great resource. I know I use it because especially again, if it's a configuration specific task or topic, I could look at the online documentation. It's going to tell me exactly how to configure it. And, especially if I lab it up, right? This is what I'm going to use as a reference when I try to, first time I ever set something up in a lab, I'm going to use this online documentation. So again, that could be a great resource. So that's what you have, right? So we go back to the study plan. We have our topics to the left. And now next to the topics, we have our resources, be it books, videos, labs, whatever's going to get you to that level of knowledge that you need for that topic, be it, compare, define, or configure, right? You're going to have the resources that get you there. So now what you need to do is determine the time that you need to devote to each topic, right? As you're studying. The study, as you go through a study plan and you're studying these topics, you got to know how much time you're going to devote. So to me, whenever I develop a study plan, I'm trying to determine, how much time to allocate to it, to my topics or to my study plan, right? I have to draw a line in the sand, right? That means I have to pick an aggressive exam date that's going to keep me on track. All right. Because if I don't set a date for my exam, right, I can just keep pushing it back and back and say, oh, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. And I'm not going to stay disciplined. And I'm not going to stay on track in my study. Right. And I could fall off. But if I already scheduled my exam and I know that date's approaching, then it's going to keep me committed to the time that I've dedicated to study, right? And that's what you're going to have to do, is you're going to have to look at, well, here's all the topics. Here's where, and you do kind of like a broad feel for where you're at. Like if this, all this stuff is brand new to you, right? You're going to need a lot. You're going to need more time. But if this is technology you worked with, there's only a few areas you need to strengthen, and you think you can be exam ready in a few weeks, right? Then you set it for a few weeks. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go through each topic and subtopic, and you're going to determine how much time you need to study, right? Is this brand new? Again, I need to spend more time because you're not refreshing at that point, you're learning, right? So it's going to take more time. Whereas if something I've used in the past and I'm a little rusty and I just need to refresh on it, that's going to be less time that I need. So that's what you have to look at. You have to look at, okay, this topic I'd never used. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to spend more time on it. This one I've used. I just have to refresh on it, less time. And then I have to look at the weight, right? So it's like, okay, well, this section is only 10% of my exam. I'm not going to spend a large amount of time on this topic. I'm going to become familiar with it, but I'm certainly not going to try to become an expert on it. Like, unless I already know it, right? But I'm not, like, if it's something I've never used, I'm going to know a little bit about it, but believe me, I'm spending the time in those sections that are worth 25 to 30% of the exam, because I can't afford to blow those sections. If I mess up those sections, I failed. If I mess up the 10% section, then I can still recover, right? I can still pass the exam. So again, now as you go through each exam topic, and you determine how much time you need, right? Then now you know how many hours a day or how many hours a week you need to study, right? And this is really going to be based upon your schedule. Like, are there only certain days of the week you can study, or can you study every day for like 2 hours, right? So I try to study every day, right? So I try to do, when I'm preparing for a certification, I try to at least 2 hours a night or 2 hours in the morning, at least 2 hours a day, really, is my goal is. I want to spend a minimum of 2 hours a day. Anything above that is gravy. But I have to set a line. It's like, no matter what, I have to spend 2 hours studying. It'd be it in the morning before I start my day or after work, but I am going to sit down and study for 2 hours. And then I probably give myself, more time on the weekend, right? So you know what, this weekend, for this certification, I think I need to spend 6 hours on the weekend, maybe 3 hours on Saturday, 3 hours on Sunday, or it could be, hey, 2 hours on Saturday, 4 hours on Sunday, or, whatever you think you can do, realistically commit to, and which will allow you to cover all these exam topics by your exam date. Now, if you go through all the topics and you determine, hey, you know what, I'm not going to be able to meet that exam date. Well, the beauty part is you can move that exam date, but don't keep moving your exam date because you haven't been committed to your study schedule. Because I've seen people, they study, then they let off, right? They just kind of fall off for a little bit, and then they forget things that they learned. So they have to basically start from scratch, and they never get there. So, if you're going after a certification exam, like I said, draw that line in the sand, pick that date and commit to that date, and set up your study schedule so you can get there, that you'll be ready in time. And, but if you set it and it's not realistic, then adjust it. But that's the only time you should adjust it. Don't keep moving it. I've seen people do that and they never get there because they just slack off and they have to restart. And so the idea is to have a realistic but aggressive date for your exam. So, just what are some of the other things, right? So, like, as I mentioned, we have, you have your topics, you have your resources. Now you have the time that you need to allocate to each topic. You have your exam date. So the other thing you really want to do is, you want to go through your exam topics, and like I was mentioning, you're going to want to determine how well you already know it. And like I said, so as you're allocating that time, you got to figure out, well, how much time do I need to spend on this topic? And, usually I can go through and I can see, this is something I work with, on a regular basis, right? I don't need to spend that much time. So the other thing I try to do, is if there's something, what is something I want fresh in my mind, right? Because I can't have everything fresh in my mind when I sit in the exam date. So that's going to kind of determine the order I study, right? I don't study for an exam, look at the blueprint and starting at the top and working from the bottom. I have a strategy, right? It's like, you know what? I'm not very strong in this area, so I'll study it and I may revisit it a day or two before the exam because I need that fresh in my head because it's not something I worked with, over a period of time just something I know. This stuff is like, I have to keep reminding myself. I have to keep relearning or refreshing. So when I go into exam, it's fresh to me. So that's what I do. When I'm preparing for a certification exam, I've built a study plan, and and it's really useful, right? It's how you stay on track, it's how you stay focused, and that's how it's going to get you to that certification. So I hope you found this useful as you prepare for your own exam. That you can use this as potentially as a way to prepare. Hey, if you never built a study plan before, maybe you have. Maybe the way you set yours up is different, and that's great. If you do have something that works, stick with it. This is something that works for me, and I just wanted to share it with you all. So I hope you found that helpful. I really appreciate you all listening. So until next time, have a great week. Do you want to be part of an online community of like-minded people? Join us at cyberjobhacks.com, where you'll receive the latest industry news, cybersecurity career trends, invitation to free events, and exclusive offers. So join our private Facebook group at cyberjobhacks.com.
Thank you for listening to the Cyber Job Hacks Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please share with a friend who may be interested in becoming a cyber professional. Also, please leave a review on Apple Podcast. Your feedback is greatly appreciated, as it will shape our future episodes. Meet us here every Monday as we discuss the cyber job market and how to launch your career. Until next time, have a great week.